G'day, Big Al Story here. Someone has recently made some comments that have made me aware of how when I'm writing a story or I am saying a story, how the energy of the characters can sort of possibly live with inside me or follow me around, like in an energetic or like even like a spiritual sense. And I've always been aware of that, but I think in this style of storytelling where I'm speaking from first person, it's really important to be aware of that and to bookend it. So in meditations that I've carried out for people, I have a very clear start and finish, and I get rid of things at the end as part of the process. So I think the intention I want to put into how I start and finish these chapters is I'm going to take a deep breath in and a breath out, and then after it's like a reset breath, and at that moment I'm working in the space of the story and the characters, and then I take a deep breath in and out at the end, and I'm only taking with me anything that was useful from the story, anything like in love and light, anything that's not useful for me and is not serving me gets left in the story and in the universe of that story. Yeah, it's got me thinking. Yeah, where does story live? Anywho's, let's get started. Chapter 3 of Morley Creek. Don't know what it's called yet because I haven't said the chapter. Okay, so here we go. Let's shut the door, take you on a journey. The reason I shut the door is to get rid of the noise, not to take you on a literal journey. But here we go. I'm going to be taking breaths all the way through this story. I've taken many before and many after, but the signifying of this first in-out breath is a reset and it's opening, and then I'm going to close it off at the end. So I'm in character now. So we're heading out of town, and Jim's sitting next to me, and I'm sort of a little bit excited because I feel like we're going to go ahead and actually do some investigations. We might go check out what he just spoke about with the young girl. So we're heading out of town. We're just past the last few little shops and things, and we're just heading out. We're in a ute. It's a police ute, and I ask Jim, what are we doing? And he's like, we're just scouting the area just to see how things are going. I'll just show you around. And I'm like, okay. So we keep driving, and then there's no houses left. It's just like a bit of bush, a bit scrubby land on both sides, a mountain over the back, a few hills on the horizon, a few like council planted trees along. And then there's no gutters. It's like a country road, but it's tarmac. We just keep driving, and then we just pull off the shoulder of the road, and on the short grass we turn around, and it reminds me a little bit of the controlled burn. And I'm like, we're pointing back into town. There's the person that opened my eyes to this, just sent me a message. That wasn't part of the story. So we're pointing back to town with the car, and all I can see is, there's a lot that I can see when I really look at it. There's the road, a bit of gravel, mowed grass, probably, I don't know, a foot high. And then behind that, there's a sharp line. Looks like flames coming up over the short grass, but it's just long grass coming up over the short grass. So it looks like it's mowed on both sides. A few council planted trees. And one single thing that we're just looking at is 2 bars in the road, in the dirt, like a pole like this, another pole like this, and then a little white piece of tin across the top that says Morley Creek. And then we just look at it, and I say to Jim, I don't say anything because he's usually playing a game with me. And then eventually it gets too much, and I'm like, so what are we doing, Jim? And he goes, we're just looking around. And I'm like, okay. And I know he's playing a game with me, so I just look out the side window, look out this window, and I'm like, okay, I'm just waiting for the punchline. I can play this game too, Jim. And then he unclicks his door, because he's been driving, unclicks his door, gets out, walks towards the Morley Creek sign, and he stands about 3 meters in, like this side of it, just looking at it, hands on hips, like with his fists on his hips, not in his pockets, just looking at it, belly hanging out, just looking at it. There's a bit of longer grass around the poles at the bottom, and he's just looking at it, and then he just walks towards it, and he doesn't really need to bend his head because it's quite a tall sign, but he bends his head just a bit anyway and just walks underneath it. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then I just look at him, and then he just tells me to come here like this, because he's standing on the other side still with his hands on his hips after doing this. And I'm like, all right. And I walk through, and there's like just a little bit of longer grass under it, where the mower hasn't been able to get close to the sign and the poles. And I walk through, and then he extends his hand, and he's like, welcome to Morley Creek. And I'm like, well, thank you for welcoming me to Morley Creek. And he said, you can come through that, you can come through there anytime you want. And I said, thanks, Jim. And then he walks back to the sign, so all we can see is the back of the sign now. And he's a funny bloke. Jim's a funny bloke. And he goes beep, 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 and pretends that he's hitting a code to get back out the doorway of Morley Creek. Walks back through. And then I walk, and he doesn't pretend to shut the door, but I'm playing the game. So I go up to the thing, and I go beep, beep, beep. 1, 2, 3, 4, bing. I walk back out, and I walk over, just follow him back to the car. We both get in the car, clunk, clink. Both our doors shut, and we just look at the sign again. And I'm like, yep, I can do this all day, Jim. And then eventually I say, why is this place called Morley Creek? And he said, that's a long story. It's a good question, but it's a long story. I can show you part of Morley Creek if you'd like. And I'm like, let's do it. And then he just sits there, and we're still looking. And then he goes, just keeps looking. It's a long, awkward silence. And then he goes, this grass needs to be seen to. And I'm like, okay. Would you want to call the council guys and get them out and do some and see to it? And he goes, no. He says, this grass needs to be seen too. I'm like, oh, so I've seen the other grass back at the police station, and now I'm seeing this grass. And he's like, you're getting it. You're starting to understand. And I'm like, okay, well, I've seen this grass too. And then he's like, and I feel the ute wobble a little bit. Feels very different to the fire truck. And then he calls up the council. He's like, Roger. He's like, yeah, mate, yeah, things are good. Yep. How's things with you? Yep. And then he pauses, and he looks across at me, and he's like, yeah, he's going all right. He's going all right. He's okay. And then I'm like, he goes, yeah. But anyway, mate, you have to get those younger fellas onto the mowing, because they haven't mowed around the poles. They've done a good job with the rest of it, good coverage, but you've got to get right up to the pole to whippersnipper. He's like, yeah, mate. Right. But anyway, it's I've got lots to do today, so it's good hearing from you, mate, and I'll catch up with you later. All right, mate? Yep. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye. Clunk. And then we sit there and we see to the grass a bit longer. We just see it. And then we, when Jim's good and ready, starts up the ute, and off we fly back into town. And then we pull over another spot, and I'm like, I'm fucking sick of this shit. If we pull over to the side of the road, on the opposite side of the road, because we're heading back into town, and then we walk, just walking along the side of the road. I'm following Jim, and I'm like, I'm all ears, Jim. Whatever you want to show me, you show me. And then we get to like there's just a bump in there's mowed grass on both sides of the road, and then there's like a bump, and we could walk through it if we wanted to, but we don't, and we just stand at the edge of it, and we look at this bump in the mowed grass, and the grass inside it is a bit longer, because the mower can't really, unless you get in there with a whippersnipper, you're not going to get it. So it's just like just standing there looking at this longer grass inside the bump. And he said, "That's Morley Creek." And I was like, all right, cool, that makes sense, Morley Creek. And then we look across the other side of the road, and it goes into a pipe, this bump. So I can imagine when it rains, the water goes in there through the pipe and out the other side. And we look across the other side of the road, and there's like 4 posts and a fence. And like that is like technically you would call this a bridge. And it's, and we're like, okay. And I'm like, cool, I like this, Jim. I didn't say that out loud, but I was thinking, I'm like, you showed me Morley Creek. I appreciate that. And before I can say anything or really want to say anything, I'm like, okay. We just trudge back to the ute. We jump in, clunk, clink, shut both the doors, and then drive back into town. And we drive down the main street, and the finger comes out, and Jim gives everyone the middle finger. Most of the guys give Jim the middle finger, but not by doing this, but by just a little nod and a little up nod, most of them. And we stop at the station. So the bakery goes past on the right. We stop at the station, which is on the left. We pull up out the front. End of chapter 3. What would I call chapter 3? Not sure. Let me know. Yeah, so we're back at the station. That's the end of chapter 3. Now I'm going to take a deep breath and a deep breath out. Anything that is in this story that's not useful for me or that could possibly follow me around, I'm going to release it. Here we go. And I'm back. So yeah, interesting process. Yeah, stories live on their own, but that, I guess, as I've been made aware, stories can live in people. And yeah, I think it's going to be a journey for me to figure out how to, because I know story has its place. It is a technology. But to simply say a story can be harmful because you can take on the stories and you can get lost in it. To simply say that's a reason not to do it is probably, yeah, something I'm going to work with. I guess there might be stories that I tell, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this isn't really my story, or I've taken it on but it's not my story, or there's no sense in me telling this. And then although it might be a sacrifice, so although I might have told like a really interesting story, I might have to make the personal decision to be like, well, interesting characters and setting and scene and plot, but that's not mine. I don't need that. I don't want that. Delete. But yeah, it's a process. And I guess what I'm talking about now is like my story. Like, it's not fictional. This is me going through a process. So yeah, thanks for listening. I'm really, really sweaty at the moment. Open this door. That's better. Oh, thanks for listening. Chapter 4 coming up.